in this series of videos is doing a more detailed analysis of each of these forms of pedagogy, didactic, authentic, transformative / reflexive, using 8 dimensions. And the first dimension is architectonic, spatial. How is the space arranged? So we know what a traditional classroom was like. And what I'm going to do now is I am going to take you into a classroom, a real classroom, and I'm going to mention the names of the people and the place because they deserve credit. I'm going to take you into a school in Kettle Moraine, Wisconsin, where one of my master's students in the College of Education is a teacher, and the teacher's name is Jessica Haroon. And in a way, it's a kind of a parable of what's possible in terms of reconfiguring the space of learning. And while I'm talking about this, you'll see some images going past, some slides going past, which show you this classroom. So anyhow, Kettle Moraine was and has been a conventional school with classrooms and distinct spaces, one teacher in each classroom, 30 kids. And what they've been doing over a number of years is creating a second school within the school. So the second school is called Create, which is aspirational about a new kind of learning. And the original school is now called the Legacy Classrooms. And what's kind of clever about this school is that the kids and the teachers can choose to move from one school to another, and gradually Create's been becoming a bigger part of the school. And one of the parents is an architect, and as they create this new Create school, they've been literally taking down the walls. So it's a big structure with which had all these walls and corridors in it, and they've been gradually taking these walls down. And in this space is a space where a couple of hundred students can interact in small groups with little quiet rooms, reading spaces. The staff room for the teachers is a glass room in the middle, which can look over the whole thing. The teachers are wandering around the classroom. And here are a number of aspects of what's happening. Firstly, a high degree of informality, 150 students in the one space, but also highly structured. So it's highly structured around everybody working on their laptops, being connected to the wireless, working autonomously in a self-directed way on various learning activities, various projects. The teacher can keep an eye on everything that's going. They can wander around and talk to an individual student. They can get a little group of students together and they can talk to them. But one of the important things is the learning does not actually have to happen in this space, because exactly the same processes can happen, overnight or over the weekend. And in fact, learning can then, in these sort of social forms, can then extend into other parts of the day and other parts of life. So this is this idea of ubiquitous learning. But also what's interesting is a degree of responsibility for the learning amongst the learners, a degree of autonomy. And in fact, we have another little video which we've shown elsewhere on this site, where the students themselves talk about the kinds of people that need to operate in this kind of space. The other question really is one of duty of care, which is it would be possible. So these students are all in the same space, they're all visible, but in fact, and this is not the case here. We've got another school where we talk about this called Discovery One in New Zealand in the website, little example. The kids can actually go out and take their mobile phones and be visible in terms of GPS and do projects in the community where, even though they're not physically in the same space, it's possible to keep a track of not just what they're doing, but where they are at any one point. So classically, what the school was, the traditional didactic school, was about putting kids in the classroom and they're all visible, they're all under control, they're all within a line of sight. But now there are these new ways of developing metaphorical lines of sight via GPSs, via internet connections, via engagement measures and the like. And what we have increasingly is a phenomenon that we call learning analytics. So, whereas in a traditional classroom, you could see everybody in the classroom, but you couldn't know what they were thinking and doing until the work got handed in. Now it's possible to analyse that work and to think about that work and see that work all along, to keep a comprehensive view. And one of the ironies of this is that allows you to free up the space where work happens, and also the times where work happens as well. So this is the architectonic, one example of the kinds of architectonic shifts that happen in this new kind of environment. The second dimension that we've looked at across these different paradigms is what we call discursive. So what we have in these environments is complex, scaffolded, lateral peer-to-peer interaction. That's what we have in these kinds of environments. So classic classroom discourse is read the textbook, memorize it. Teacher asks a question, students put up their hand and answer a question. Again, a kind of a hub and spoke model of classroom discourse and the content of curriculum. But now what we can do is we can have these very complex, scaffolded peer-to-peer interactions, discussion boards where everyone participates, for example, or peer-reviewed works where everyone gives each other feedback. These are actually very complex things to manage, which all of a sudden, these complex discursive forms become more manageable. As, by the way, we have complex discursive peer-to-peer participatory discourse happening in new media as well. It's sort of kind of similar. So what happens in these kinds of environments is the vertical command discourse, where the teacher tells you knowledge and tells you to do things and where you comply with those commands, gets displaced or replaced to some degree by horizontal dialogue. But the important thing is it's often very highly structured horizontal dialogue around peer review rubrics, around prompts which expect certain conversation, and so on. So it's not as if it's a free-for-all where everybody's talking. And also, a free-for-all where everyone's talking in a conventional classroom is chaos. It's unmanageable because you can't hear what everybody's saying and it's noisy. Whereas this can be highly scaffolded, highly structured, and it becomes not chaos. It becomes something which is functional. So what we also have discursively is a shift from a media regime, which is, one to many, textbook to students, teacher lecture to students, to one where alternately the teacher is going around the room working one-on-one with a student, or one among many when a student's work gets published to a portfolio and other people comment, when they make a comment on a discussion board, and so on. So we have quite a big shift in the forms of media in those classrooms.